Hello faithful viewers and welcome back to another review. This time we're looking at the Transformers Cybertron Voyager class Starscream. Now this is the more common release, arguably, of the character. If you remember back in the time of Transformers Cybertron, he basically had two figures that came out, discounting the tiny little Legends, Cyberverse, tiny little core class, whatever you want to call it now. He had this Voyager class, and then he had the Mammoth Supreme class figure, because obviously in Cybertron he temporarily became the size of Primus. But this specific Starscream, I do believe, originated in a 2-pack with
Vector Prime!
No, I don't have
Vector Prime!
I just so happened to get this guy at a Comic-Con. Believe it or not, I've actually been to a Comic-Con now. Well, hey. Now, he is obviously second-hand. As you can maybe tell, he is missing something vital to the jet mode. Well, I say vital, it's not vital, but it is significant. And those would be the rear fins of the jet, which would sit at the back here, and they would be pointing upwards to kind of give him more of a shape akin to the Tetrajet versions of Starscream that are out there. So basically his Cybertron native vehicle mode. And I do believe that was the main inspiration for this, at least visually, because there are some startling similarities to that, and especially if those fins were there, it'd be even more triangular shape. But despite the fact that we're missing them, we've still got everything else, and he looks really, really nice. I actually do like the colour scheme that we've got going on here. Yes, it's not accurate to the cartoon in any way, shape or form, because he was more predominantly white with red, lighter red accents, I should say. This colorization here is more akin to Frost, not specifically the Unicorn Trilogy's Frost, because he was green for some reason, but more like your classic G1 Frost, with nice deep crimson red with your silver accents and a beautiful purple cockpit there. Love that. So even though it's not accurate to how Starscream is usually portrayed, I really like this colour combination. It's very rich, it's very powerful, it's very grandiose, which is very much what Starscream is as a character. He's a very grandiose character. But yeah, we've got the primary red, we've got the silver, we've got some darker grey there to accent that out, and we've got black on the nose cone, we've got some little bits of gold there, hiding his visible head syndrome. Well, I say hiding, but it's not hiding, and he does have visible head syndrome. I'm contradicting myself live on camera. Hey! We've got some Decepticon symbols on the wings there. We've got some cannons there, which I don't think move whatsoever. They are just completely moulded statically in place. Probably the Supreme class version had movable cannons, but I've never actually played with that version. Unfortunately, we've got some visible screws there. That's a little bit unfortunate, but hey-ho. And then flipping him to the underside, he actually does a very decent job at hiding what becomes what, at least from here. I mean, you can have a good guess as to what becomes what. I mean, the visible head there, but on the whole, I think he does a pretty good job at hiding it all. Until you flip him over, and then it kind of becomes obvious, because there's his arms just hanging there, and process of elimination, there are his legs. But hey-ho, he has actual rolling wheels on the bottom there, so technically the jet has landing gear. And he has a third one there, and even that rolls. It doesn't come out anymore, it's just moulded in place. And then we can see his Cyberkey gimmick weapons are there, and we'll show them off in robot mode, methinks. And I think a difference between this and the Supreme class figure is how exactly you do activate the Cyberkey gimmick, because his port is there for this figure, and I believe that the Supreme class one has them either side of the wings, and I think that's how he uses them in the cartoon, especially when he replaces one of his sword blades for a cannon. This version here, they're both sword blades, but again, we'll show that off later. So overall, I like the vehicle mode and what we've got going on here. Now, coming to transformation, it's fairly simple, and it is accurate to the cartoon, because of course it was based off this. So first thing we want to be doing really is taking the wings here and just moving them out, and this will help with clearance. Now we may need to move them up and down accordingly to help us get these legs out, because they have quite a tight fit. But just get your fingers in and just start pulling at all of this until it basically all separates away. You may need to push down on these front bits because they tab into the underside of the silver cockpit area. it'll just take a little bit of finagling, and I may knock over my setup as we try to do this. There we go, very tight. And then basically just bring the legs down on these really beautiful ratchet joints, and until they are completely out like that, and then rotate them like so at swivels at the knees, and then straighten the feet out like this. Get your thumbs in, pull down on the heels and get them out, and then take the little points of the nose cones and fold them into the underside of the feet, and then you can stand him up as you please. Turning our attention to the top of the robot mode, what we can do now is take all of this and fold it back until it tabs into place like so, and then ratchet these down. Lots of lovely clicking ratchet joints all over him, love that. Come to the back, pull down on his arms until they tab into place like that with a satisfying click. Same on this. That one wasn't as clicky, but it is tabbed in. And really, that's it. Now, the only other thing that we would do is take the fin, split it, and then just fold in both sides of them down like that until they basically hung down off the back like that. But we don't have that, unfortunately, for this. So the only other little bit we'll do, something I like to do, is kind of personal preference, is just angle these little fins back like that. And I don't know, it just helps break up the jet a little bit more, I suppose. And despite it look like there should be some form of hinge there, I don't believe there is. So that is Starscream fully transformed into an iconic looking robot mode. I mean, this Starscream is the Starscream from my childhood. I grew up with the Unicron trilogy, especially more so with Energon and especially Cybertron. This was my cartoon growing up. Yes, Transformers Prime is my favourite of all time, but arguably this was my quintessential Starscream growing up, and it is an iconic silhouette, and Legacy have yet to do a new version of this. I know third-party companies have done updated versions of this, and they look spectacular as well, but this is iconic. So let's take a look at that noggin in greater detail, and it is a very G1 inspired head. Silver face, red eyes, no light piping. I believe it is just painted on like that, and when you've got the vents on the side there, is very, very, very G1. Love it. And then if we continue to pan, we've got still the silver chest. Unfortunately, those guns, as we discovered earlier, do not rotate. There's not a lot more colour revealed through the transformation, because kind of what you have in jet mode is what you get in robot mode. It's not a very complex transformation, nothing new is illuminated, so yeah, a lot of the same detail is still there, and there ain't really else to comment on, to be honest. It's just he's iconic. And I will keep saying that because he is, with the whole blocky wings. I suppose that is one thing that kind of works against him. He is quite blocky. And I don't know, it might have been interesting if they'd have found a way to take the null rays on the side here and maybe like double hinge them to the back side of the arms just to clean him up a little bit. Because, yeah, he's top heavy, isn't he? He's quite top heavy. Now, in terms of gimmickry, I didn't get his cyber key with him, unfortunately, so I'm having to use a cyber key who belongs to one of my other Transformers. The specific one I'm forgetting right this second. It's probably in a previous review. It might be scrap metals. I don't know. I can't remember. But I think that this is the one that this figure would naturally come with, hence why I'm using this. So, he has the port in the back here, which is accurate to the cartoon until, as I said earlier, he got the cannon. But this is the one with two sword blades. It doesn't want to quite tab in properly. I have a bit of a hard time shimmying it in, but once it is in, if we just give it a good old push, that's one, and then there we go. So you kind of have to push it in twice. It's like a two-stage activation kind of thing. But then, the result of that, if we get him in focus, are his two sword blades, which are these clear, translucent purple pieces of plastic, very much like his cockpit is. And they do have some detail on them. You can probably see that in the light there. They are moulded very nicely indeed. And again, colour is accurate to the cartoon because they were purple and that. And, you know, it's a very simple gimmick. It's very nice. It just gives him a little extra personality and gives him some other options because, in terms of weaponry, I mean, because, you know, he has his null rays there and those. Let's give him some hand-to-hand melee kind of weaponry as well. So a couple of sword blades are not to be, you know, poo-pooed. So coming down to articulation then, he might surprise you as to the things he can do. I mean, you would expect there to be a little bit of hindrance because of all that, but you know, we'll get to it. So in terms of the head, all it can do is a swivel, and it is capable of a 360 swivel, so there's no looking up and there's no looking down. In terms of the arms at the shoulders, we've got a lovely 360 degrees of swivel there and a beautiful ratchet joint. He can move his arms in and out ever so slightly, but of course you do have all the hindrance because of all of this gaff up there. So it only goes out that far, and that's a bit disappointing. And in terms of the elbows, he does actually have 90 degrees of bend at what amounts to be the elbows, and of course they can go the other way due to transformation, but that would mean that you would have to unclip them there, so there is no natural back bend, which is, you know, realistic, but that's it for the arms. There's nothing up for wrists, there's no finger articulation of any kind, so arm is admittedly a little bit limited. There's no, you know, rotation at the elbow of any kind, unfortunately, so very blocky. There's no waist articulation, there's no waist swivel, no crunch, no nothing like that. In terms of legs then, he has a forward kick of, you know, a good 90, so that's decent. In terms of back, very impressive back. And then if we move his arms out of the way, he has a beautiful spread. Surprising. At the knee, he has a very nice ratcheted knee of over 90 degree bend, as you can see. He has a swivel of 360 at the knee as well. And then in terms of the feet, he has up and down due to transformation, and that's kind of it. There's no rocker of any kind. So articulation rather, pardon me, it's a mix of being basic, but with some surprises there, especially in the legs. His legs are almost uber articulated, apart from the ankles, of course. He really kind of just suffers at the top of the robot. For the time, there were other figures out there with better articulation, so it is a little bit underwhelming, but it's not terrible, I suppose. And speaking of figures of the time, here he is next to Deluxe Class Skywarp from Transformers Cybertron. Sticking with the theme of Transformers Cybertron, here is our Voyager Class Starscream with our Voyager Class Override, the updated version from the new Legacy toy line. So that's how they look together. Speaking of Legacy, here is Cybertron Starscream next to Armada Starscream. They are technically meant to be the same character, even though that kind of really doesn't work because Cybertron and its connections to Armada and Energon, very tenuous, and I personally don't count them as the same iteration, but, you know, technically they are, and I could rant on about that for hours, so let's just move on. Or maybe not, because I've just brought out another version of the same character. So we've got Cybertron Starscream on the left, and then we've got Armada Paranix Starscream, aka Thundercracker, on the right. And these figures are kind of from the same time era, I suppose. This figure on the right is older than the one on the left. And how do they stack up compared to one another, especially in terms of articulation? There ain't that much difference. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't bring out Cybertron Megatron for a comparison in a Starscream review. Can you see why I've not done leader class reviews in a hot minute? Because trying to stand this guy next to Starscream and get him in frame is a pain. But, you know, this is going to be the year where I finally do leader class reviews. Wish me luck with that. But that's how Starscream first lieutenant to Megatron, I don't know his rank. His second in command to Megs, this is how they look together. I do words good. And then naturally we'll cap off with a comparison with good old Mysterio. To transform Starscream back into his vehicle mode, first thing we'll do is we'll turn our attention to the feet and just fold these spikes out there, then fold the heels back into the feet like so, and then we can just straighten the feet out like that, and let's rotate them at the knees just so they're facing that away. Disconnect him at the waist like this, and bring all of this bit up so his head is now facing into his chest, and basically he's looking through his cockpit almost. Then ratchet his arms around and into position like that. Straighten the wings if you've got them slightly curved, which I tend to do for robot mode. Take the arms, and we want to be detaching them just like that, and we're just going to be folding them all the way back until they plug in like so. Same thing on that one. Let's just do that. There we go. And then let's just make sure. It might be beneficial, just because of the way that the legs fold in, to fold the arms up and out of the way like that, just for the sake of clearance. So then we basically want to be ratcheting the legs back in on themselves. And again, you may have to just rotate stuff out of the way temporarily before clipping it all back in, just to accommodate these legs. And something is feeling a little bit wrong at the front there. There we go. We just need to force it in, and then line up the side. Doesn't look like it really clips in anywhere at all. It just sits there, so just make sure that that is somewhat like that. And then same thing on this. Nice clicky ratchet. Let's just level it in. Okay. And then peg all that together. Make sure that is the correct way. And then the last thing that we will do is rotate the fins up like that. But of course, this figure is missing them. So that's all we can do. And that is Starscream returned to vehicle mode. Right, so that has been our look at the Transformers Cybertron Voyager class Starscream. Now, on the whole, I like what we've got going on here. And then there are things that I do have issues with. Now, I like the colour scheme. I like the profile. I like the character and the iteration of Starscream that we've got here. And I like the leg articulation, I suppose. It's surprisingly good. What I don't particularly like is the lack of articulation, especially in the top half, which leads to not a lot of options in terms of posability. Now, I know during the articulation segment, I kind of complimented it a little bit. Upon reflection, here at the end of the review and trying to get him into a pose for this final shot, it does strike me really how limited he is. And if they could have just found a way to do something with those arms, then this figure could have been even better. Now, he's good. He is good, but he's not brilliant. He exists, basically. He exists, I think, primarily to look good and to be a good kind of shelf piece, a good display item. And as a toy full of gimmicks, he works well. More so as a collector's item and something to be used for like stop motions and whatnot, maybe not so much, because you are very limited really as to what you can do with him. Case in point, this upper body. Especially the fact that he's got no waist swivel of any kind limits him even more. So do I recommend it? Well, on the one hand, yes, because of the iconography of him, and if you are a child of the Cybertron era like I am, then getting this Starscream means quite a lot. But if you are a collector of more modern day Transformers and expect a lot more out of your figures and expect a high level of quality and articulation and complexity and challenge with the transformations, maybe he's not for you. I think it all depends on nostalgia and when you grew up and who your Starscream is as to whether he's worth getting or not. For me, sure, I'll take him. But if you're more of a modern fan or more of an adult collector, maybe not. So that's my take on this Starscream. Thank you everybody so much for stopping by and checking out this review. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and share around to help out the channel. And until the next time, see you all later.